everyone, and welcome to the first actual virtual Books in the World um, from the Cape Cod Writers Center. I am Madeline Mealy-Holt, and I am your host. I am the Vice President of the Writers Center. As many people know, the Writers Center has had to postpone its annual conference, which is a signature event, attracts about 300 people a year, and has been going on for about 50 years. So Books in the World was born at the birth of cable TV, which is about 40 years ago. And now we are taking the next step to bring it to you virtually. And we think it will give us an opportunity to talk to a lot more people. And today we're going to talk with Kathy Aspden, who is one of our Writers Center members and a very successful author. Hi, Kathy. Welcome.
Hi, Madeline. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this new event. I feel you and I have talked about needing to take this step before, and here we are doing it. And I'm sure a lot of authors will enjoy this format. At least I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
So Kathy has written a new book. It's called An Irishman's Son. And I am pleased to be able to say that I have read it. I had a chance to read it in manuscript. I read your first book, Baklava, The Scotty and an Irishman. So you've had some good success with this already in winning jacket blurbs from 2 New York Times bestselling authors. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, Casey Sherman and Anne LeClaire are the very wonderful supporters of writers and great writers themselves. So I'm going to ask you to jump in just a minute, but before I do, I'm going to read you a quote from one of the readers that I think sets up a lot of what I felt about the book and gives you something to think about as well. So this person said, "Great read. Author has an amazing ability to take you back and forth to past and present seamlessly. Love the depth of love between all of her characters. Makes me want to be more like them." So Kathy,
That's wonderful.
How do you feel about that quote?
I feel great about that quote. I want to say that I really appreciated getting some nice feedback from Casey Sherman and Anne LeClaire and you as well, Madeline. But what really tickles me all the time is when my readers fall in love with my book. My reader feedback is always my first genuine moment of pride is when a reader says, this was a book that I couldn't put down. And I'm always so grateful to get that kind of feedback.
So I know you did a lot of road shows, meetings, book clubs, and tell us a little bit about how you felt. What are some of the things that people had to say about your first book and how it led to your writing the second book?
Well, to be honest with you, the first book was, as any first book, it was a surprise. It was a surprise to find out that people really were enjoying it and passing it along. And very quickly, I got involved in the book club circuit. Goodreads and Lit Lovers were wonderful to me, plus all of the local, any place I could drive, I would run to. Offering to come and speak either as a guest speaker for a group or to be a participant in their book club after they read it. So the feedback I got was also very enlightening. I know that just about everybody's heard of the auteur theory where the producer and the director are the last people that really are the authors of any movie. Well, I think for a book, the last real author of a book is the reader, because it's going through all of their experiences and it's resonating with them. And that's the part that I have loved to see. But I also got feedback that was really helpful. I got some feedback about questions that people had about the first book, about it was done in a multi point of view, and it was done back and forth in a timeline. And there was definitely a segment that was missing, and it was intentionally missing. So we jump from an incident that happened in 1992 straight to 2015. And I got a lot of questions from readers about that aspect, like what what motivated the husband and wife to end up in the place that they ended up bringing up their child, and emotionally in that place. And what I realized was that it was a huge story. It was a story that I knew in my mind. I knew what the motivation was for my female protagonist. I knew what the motivation was for her husband, but and I assumed that people knew because they were along for the ride. And a lot of people said that's where we want to dig deep. And so I found myself telling the story more in book club events, well, this is what she felt and the guilt she had and whatever else. And then one day I started to write the second book, which wasn't An Irishman's Son. It was a totally different book, and I realized that I wasn't done telling this story. And then this story fell out of me, and I realized how much I had missed in the telling of this story. So it's a lovely slice of the first book. It's the kind of story that you could read independently and not even realize there was a first book. Although that would give away a few things that would make it less fun to read the first book again. But so it was readers that kept me thinking about these two characters whose story wasn't finished being told.
Can you tell us in a couple of sentences about the plot of the first book and the second book?
Sure. You know me, I'm not going to tell anything in a couple of sentences. I'm terrible.
Well, you and I, and this happens often, you and I know these characters pretty well. We, especially you, and we've come to understand them. And that's why I picked the quote about how much you describe love, because this is basically a love story between two people from different worlds. Go on and give us.
Okay, well then love is complicated. It always is. And in the most amazing love stories, there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be storms to weather. And how do you get to the other side of the storm? And so the first book, Baklava, Biscotti, and an Irishman, actually is a love story that involves a love triangle. We have a couple that's kind of an unlikely husband and wife. She was from Neomachri, Greece. She met her husband at the tail end of the Vietnam War in 1973. Her husband was 20 years older. Immediately, they have a connection. They fall in love, and against her parents' wishes, she moves to Quincy, Massachusetts. And it happened in an instant. And then they build a life together. And so picture 19 years later, along comes Gregory Costa, who is a cardiothoracic surgeon. He meets them professionally, and he becomes involved in their life. And they have to fight their way through this turmoil that he creates for the two of them. And when I say he, I'm not blaming him because I loved my day. But Gregory also was a character that had his own story to tell. So his story was as an Italian immigrant growing up in Dorchester with virtually nothing but his own wits to survive and keep his family alive. So his is a story of success. You're rooting for him. In fact, there isn't a character you're not rooting for. So it's the 1992 time frame that most of Baklava, Biscotti, and an Irishman takes place in. And then when we get to this resolution of this love triangle, we immediately jump to 2015 to what is 23 years later, and their son's revelation. So it's a very emotional story.
It's very emotional, and I want to jump right.
That wasn't 2 sentences.
But for anybody who's listening who already knows your first book and has not been aware that An Irishman's Son is out, I want to just give it a big push. It is a lovely story, and it's lovely in the sense that it gives you a lot more about both these people, but it's a tough story in that it's about an affair and the aftermath and the birth of this child and how these two people who truly love each other are coping with, on her part, her guilt, and on his part, his love and his identity, I guess, his pride. A lot of things. You do it very well. Um, I think that readers, whether they read the first book or not, will find In Irishman's Son something that they'll think about quite a bit. It's very interesting. Plus, I want you to talk a bit about the ethnicity of the neighborhoods, how you a bit you have just a,
Absolutely.
you have you lived in South
Well,
Boston?
so as far as the Boston area is concerned, my mother's from Dorchester, and
Okay.
we were shipped to Dorchester in the summertime. So where everyone else was coming to Cape Cod, we were shipped to Dorchester. My aunt, had the triple decker. That would be the kind of triple decker that Danny Mulder would have grown up in Quincy even. But it was almost a replica of the one that Gregory Costa lands in when he comes from the beautiful coastal life in Sorrento, Italy, where his family is living the dream, and then they have to leave in shame, and so he ends up in America, and he ends up literally within a couple of years being the sole support of his family, and so that kind of Willow Court, old Italian neighborhood where you minded your own business, but you knew everybody else's business.
Okay.
That was the kind of life that Gregory grew up in. Therese, on the other hand, coming from Greece, she also came from the family of jewelers, and she lived in a lovely villa. But when it didn't matter to her. She turned her back on all of that when she fell in love with Danny Mulder. Danny Mulder is really, in my mind, the hero of every story. And it's because he's that guy that has the ability to make less of a big deal about his own life, about any of his own successes, about any of even his intelligence, his integrity, his ability to zig and zag in the midst of promotion. He grew up very simple in Quincy, Mass. His idea of a good time was going fishing at Howe's Neck. So for him to end up with this life that he had never dreamed of, marrying a beautiful woman from Greece, having a business, they ended up with a wonderful business that was out of the South Shore, living in Situate, Mass, in this idyllic surrounding. And so in a way, you're taking three people from three totally different backgrounds, and you're seeing how they fit in each other's lives. And that's what I like the best about Baklava Biscotti and Irishman, is that the things that happen in their early lives factor into what happens to them in their adult lives. And there were things, again, that my readers pointed out that I didn't even see, little miracles, nuggets that I would put in the beginning of a story that I didn't realize were going to be so important by its end, and they would say, well, of course this happened because of this trauma that he had as a child. And I would think, oh my gosh, that is the reason. I didn't know it.
Well, as a former first-time novelist and now second-time novelist, you've come a long way. It sounds like your readers have had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
I hope that they continue, and I urge them to, in this time of pandemic, which is why we're here on Zoom. You need something to read that makes you think, that makes you, draws you in, gives you something to dream about. I know that you are working on another aspect of these people's lives, and we look forward to talking to you again. And I want to thank you again for being the first guest on our new Books in the Virtual Zoom. And I want to thank that Cape Cod community TV station staff for helping us make the leap into this new world. And hope that people in Harwich, Chatham, Dennis, Yarmouth, and Barnstable are watching on their cable stations. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much for this time together, and good luck with the book.
Thank you.